Good afternoon. This is Media Center, Ukraine, Odesa. Our next briefing is a talk with Ihor Romanenko, retired Lieutenant General, Deputy Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. He's online with us. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Let's start with missiles. We've recently learned that Germany is ready to provide Taurus missiles to size. Can they change the state of play as it was in the past with other samples of Western weapons? I think that we should not expect that some weaponry, except for nuclear weapons, could be a real game changer. This is the wrong approach. We should believe that we should understand that new weapons, possible aircraft, could increase the efficiency of the system in general. And the system will be the key factor here. Can you hear me? Yes, of course. Because I somehow could not see you. That's why it is very important to understand this factor. Thanks to the British, we already have significant number of cruise missiles, long-range cruise missiles. We have been supported by France. They officially informed about 150 missiles. And the support from Germany will be really very useful because that will increase our attacking capacity. Still, we don't have enough aircraft capacity. And to form forces for counteroffensive, we need such weapons as missiles, UAVs, ammunition, and also we need projectiles for our artillery, because artillery able to destroy 80% of enemy's targets. And as for the armored vehicles, which are also have been already coordinated, we'll be able to make our counteroffensive more efficient. You've mentioned aircraft capacity. We're still waiting for NATO airplanes, F-16 or F-18 that have been recently discussed. And you also told us once about the possibilities of Australia to provide such F-18. We need to be dominant in the air. Could we substitute these airplanes with different types of UAVs, combat or reconnaissance? What do you think about this? There are two ongoing processes. The world military theory, which is proved by the practice, that UAVs are becoming more significant and the trend will be preserved. We also have our experience proving this factor, which is most important for us. We cannot substitute the manned airplanes at once, because there is some capacity for drones or manned airplanes. That's why, as I've already mentioned, we should create the whole effective system with a wide spectrum of weapons using the possibilities of our military-industrial complex and the support of our Western allies. And with such system, we will be able to achieve our objectives in defense in the east and also counter-offense in the south. As for airplanes and the related training, this is secret information. Starting from the spring, different managers from different Western states provided different information. That's why we cannot comment upon these messages, upon these statements with regard to training. I can say that the training in English of our pilots and our engineers is there. And it is quite possible that already this year we will be able to see our pilots operating the relevant 4+ class aircraft. As for NATO weapons, over the latest weeks, we can see the long-term missiles, as far as I understand, Storm Shadow, being used to isolate Crimea to the maximum extent possible, which is the hubs for supplies of manpower and machinery to the occupied, through Crimea to the occupied territories of Kherson region and Zaporizhia region. How would you assess these activities from our side? I think that they are aimed at isolating Crimea there. I can agree with you. This is being done for logistics, so we need to cut logistics supply channels with the help of the mentioned missiles, but also with the UAVs and USVs, as we can see with the attacks on the enemy's facilities near Novorossiysk base. This is very important. And of course, in the future, this will help us to implement the principle of passive influence on our enemy. And even over the last 24 hours, there are messages about using drones near Moscow, near Vnukovo. Several days ago, there were events near Novorossiysk base, military base, with the tanks and the military ships there, because they have harbor at sea. And we need to increase our capacity, and the process is ongoing. The missiles that you've mentioned, we have not received them from Germany. And even despite the consolidated position of different fractions in the Bundestag, there is no documented decision. And the Bundestag should develop the document, an advisory document to the government, for the government to take a decision. And we understand that the Chancellor Scholz is responsible for the final decision. He helped us a lot with tanks, with regard to Abrams, and we see repeated messages about the training for Abramses, but we still need them. We will have them, but this is the question of when. And we're still waiting for the missiles from Germany, and we're waiting for ATACMS from the United States. But now we have what we have at the moment, as you see. As for drones near Moscow, only recently we've learned about the explosion in Sergiev Posad. Perhaps that was also caused by Ukrainian UAVs. And at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, Russian propaganda said that they allegedly destroyed all Ukrainian air defense systems. But we can see that our air defense system is still effective, and most drones are shut down. And in Russia, we can see Sergiev Posad, Tambov, and other places attacked by drones. Can you explain us? Of course, it is good for us, but what is wrong with the Russian air defense? And is it really effective, taking into consideration recent explosions, even in Moscow? And I think there is no sense in trying to analyze Russian propaganda. According to their messages, they have destroyed our defense system several times, but we have only increased the capacity of our air defense systems with SMT and Patriot, and we can see what happened in Novorossiysk. So we should be critical about the information they provide. We should use information from our official sources. And also, we should analyze other sources, for example, those from abroad. But we should be really very skeptical about what is said by the Russian propaganda. The second question about Russia's air defense system. And I am the expert in air defense and anti-missile systems. And the potential for the attack is bigger, but any country, the United States, really could not have 100% effective air defense system. And so usually countries cover or defend the most important facilities according to the capacity. And we do the same because we lack now the systems, the units to cover all our cities and towns. And despite the fact that there is a significant capacity of air defense system in Russia in respect of quality and quantity, they cannot ensure 100% defense. And it is proved by what we see now. Because according to the Russian propaganda, they shut down everything. But somehow we can see the blown up military objects, sunk ships. So we should be again skeptical about the information received from them. And I would like to emphasize this. They could not ensure 100 protection on their side because we see the results of our attacks. And they have the air defense complexes, which are in Russian, they try to renew their positions now, so they work 7 days per week, 24/7, but we see the changes in their capacity. With regard to the defense system, I have a question from our journalist from the floor. She will ask in English, and you will hear the interpretation.
Hi, Colonel Ihor Romanenko. I have two questions.
Turn the mic on.
Hi, Mr. Colonel Ihor Romanenko. I have two questions, and I will really appreciate it if you focus in the answer, because it's important from the United States opinion public, and they send me straight away when they know you are here, these two questions. The first question is, Commander, if Ukraine at the moment have two 14 tanks Leopards, and we understood at the moment the Ukrainian soldier receive training in United Kingdom. Why in this moment those tanks is not using here? And in the case they using here, is Ukrainian soldiers ready for using those tanks, or United States military former here is being conducting those? That is my first question. My second question is, we know the drones we using in Kiev the last 4 days was Shahed 131, and the technology of these tanks is from Iran and China. Where is the position of the Ukrainian government about the cooperation to China government against to Ukrainian people, against to help the Russians in this war?
And thank you for your questions. As for the first one, yes, there was the training of our soldiers. Moreover, it was the discussion of the heavy equipment with our allies for our counteroffensive. But at the moment, still, those questions that have been settled, they have not been fulfilled by our allies. And the time goes by, and this is the last month of summer where we have the proper weather conditions for counteroffensive. But neither in spring nor in the beginning of the summer, we could not received all the potential that was needed for counteroffensive. What I mean by this, we asked about those weapons in autumn last year to generals, filed official request with regard to provision of the weapons that we needed for our counteroffensive in spring, as it was offered by our allies. But we did not receive weapons, and still the process has not been finalized, so the supply is still ongoing. Several years ago, we received around 80% of what is needed. And when it comes to demining machines, we received only 15% of capacity, and maybe now we've reached 20%. So the Russians managed to create the defense line for 9 months, and because we did not receive what we needed back then. And they used those 9 months to create a very powerful line of defense. And then we could look at the requirements of the United Kingdom, their doctrine about the conditions of counteroffensive against the system that was created by Russia over the last 9 months. We are not dominant in the air, and the Russian troops that have been active in Ukraine for the last 18 months have dominance in missiles, in aircraft, in artillery, in projectiles, and in manpower. In such conditions, no doctrine of the British Army envisages the possibility of counteroffensive. But we've proved that we're able and we're capable of counter-defense. So we did not defend ourselves last year in Kharkiv and Kherson, but we're also ready for a counteroffensive, and the campaign is not over. I just want to explain the situation with counteroffensive. Now, coming back to the summer this year, the training is over for our soldiers. And in summer, we started the first stage of counteroffensives with the weapons provided and with the soldiers trained. But we could act against those areas where there were losses of equipment and manpower. Because the conditions for counteroffensives are not in line with our approaches and even the requirements of the British military documents. That was the first stage of the counteroffensive. Secondly, we did not refuse from counteroffensive, but these are the laws of the objective war. If there is the lack of the modern weapons, then the question is solved through a hard work of our soldiers. Now we use small units, and we have demined manually some of the areas. And we use small units for maneuvers to go ahead. That was the second stage. But we cannot speak about the 100% efficiency. The time passes by, and we understand that we need to use this time, which is a very important factor for combat activity. And we've started the third stage, starting from the last week, involving reserves of the brigade of the 10th Reserve Corps. With the equipment, machinery, and manpower. And we can see the Melitopol and Berdyansk directions. We have liberated important settlements like Robotina. The hostilities are still there, and Russians had to send their resources there. As for Berdyansk direction, we have liberated Staromayorsk, Urozhaine, and Priyutne. So this is our progress. And now the question, is this the counteroffensive that we've prepared, that we expected? The answer is no, because we still help and we produce by ourselves weapons and ammunition that we can, and we accumulate this. But we hope that still by the end of the summer, our allies will be able to supply those equipment that was agreed before. We're not speaking about new weapons. And I would like to remind that we asked about these weapons in autumn last year. If we had received those weapons last autumn, Russians would not have been able to create that line of defense they have now. When we accumulate all our reserves, or what we have, we do understand the system of defense in Kherson, Melitopol, Berdyansk, and Bakhmut directions. These are the possible direction of activities, and the general staff now has a very responsible decision with regard to where we can use better our capacity in 1 or 2 points. And to introduce quickly our reserves there for the Russians not to be able to respond quickly to that, and to counteract our actions there. Even with such approach, we will be able to achieve better progressive and to be more efficient during counteroffensive. This is what about first question. Do you have any additional question to the first question of yours?
My second question was about the drone Shahel from Iranian approach.
Turn the mic on, please.
Sorry. My second question was from Shahel.
Up.
Yes, my second question was about the drone Shahel. I've been in Kiev 4 days ago, and I see the Shahel in direct place. And we know the information, the technology they use in the Iranian Shahed drones against Kiev and against other counterparts here in Ukraine is technology from China. Where is the position of the Ukrainian about the China's government support officially the Russian in this war? So what do you thinking about that, and where is the position of the Ukrainian government about the China?
Thank you. Thank you very much for conducting analysis of the situation with the Shahed drones. And that was the analysis was not during the only air raid alert, during hiding, but you've stayed together without people. And recently, we see questions from the international media about why we have started attacking Moscow with UAVs, why we have started attacking Russian military bases Novorossiysk with USVs. And there are other questions in international media about any our attacks on military infrastructure facilities on the territory of the Russian Federation. To answer these questions, you should just have the same experience as the Ukrainian people have now in Ukraine. And I think that now we have a common understanding of the situation. We can see the results of the use of those Shaheds. We know that Iranians helped to create factories in Tatarstan of the Russian Federation. We know that they supply Shaheds with the airplanes and by sea, and we can see that they help to increase Russia's capacity. And there is also the role to play by the Chinese People's Republic that promised to the whole world, and first of all to Ukraine and the United States, that if they supported somehow Russian, but not with lethal weapons, but we understand that they supply like elements through Iran and through other secondary, third states. But anyway, they supply the elements of those drones for the Russian Federation, and the Russian Federation has already started constructing UAVs using these spare parts supplied by China. But I think that in several months they will be able to actually produce these Shaheds by themselves. I don't think that they will be able to substitute all the spare parts by their own facilities, their own factories, but anyway, they will be able to produce this. But our position is clear. They say in China that they should sit somewhere there on the mountain waiting for a tiger floating by. This is not the wise Asian approach in this war, because this is the war for the existential life of our country. And of course, we will take military and diplomatic, not only but diplomatic, but military and diplomatic work without allies. First of all, with the United States that have the global relations with the Chinese People's Republic. And the Russian also wants to get to that level, headed by their criminal, their president, and he is suspected in a crime, according to the decision of the International Court. It is very important to understand the real situation, and I don't know if you have, or maybe if you know this, and maybe you don't know that we've had several revolutions in our country, and the latest one was the revolution of dignity, the revolution of truth. And this is very important to use the information from the trustworthy sources. And everyone, and now we thank everyone, and we thank China. But we need to understand what we should thank them for. We would like to thank them for participating in GD, where 40 countries were presented, and there were discussions, and the decision was meant that Ukraine should be preserved in its borders. And Russia can also agree to that, but they want us to recognize the territories that they occupied, and for the next decades, they perhaps will free some of our territories, but we cannot agree to this. A lot of people have died, military civilians, and we will not agree to this. We are for a truthful approach, for the justified assessment, and we should also speak about the defense component for our country, and also the security of Ukraine is the security of the European countries. The security of Europe is the world security. Thank you. Do you have time for one more question? No. Yes. I have time for one more question. This is the question from a journalist watching our press conference online. Tell us, please, can you use this affect the situation in the Black Sea and also to help take grain from the Odesa region? We've proved that this is very important. We demonstrate that we have a new facilities now, and the Ukraine is already in the history of the world wars because last year we already used unmanned surface vessels, and we have already used UAVs and USVs, but we will also use the land drones and undersurface drones. As for unmanned surface vessels, Ukraine has already made history when we used them to attack military ships in Sevastopol military base. And now we have around 20 cases of using these USVs. And these cases have been confirmed with the international experts. We have shown our unmanned surface vessels at the fair trade in Turkey. We also demonstrated how we can use them at Novorossiysk military base, where we damaged the military ship, the tanker there. And we announced those territory and the vessels and ships there as military targets, and that was our response to Russia's statement. But they have over-evaluated themselves, and their journalists try to say that there was no statement on their side. And we had our statement, but it was proved by specific missions, namely attacking their military base. And there was also the oil depot, oil hub there, which transports around 60% of the oil from Kazakhstan. Coming back to the grain deal, and Putin left that grain deal, and there was bombardment of Odesa and also the facilities of our ports like Reni. I think we should not come back to such deal, because now we say that we are ready to attack their facilities, their ships, damaging their economy. And we can use our capacity to attack the Novorossiysk military base in response to their attacks of our ports. So if we come back to the grain deal, it should be on a higher level. So we should ensure operation of our southern ports, and then they will be able to have their ports operative. So we should come back to the deal only on that level. It should not be the old type grain deal, because that is in the past, and they lost that possibility. Thank you. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you for finding time to talk to us, and hopefully we'll be able to invite you here once again. Have a nice day. Thank you too. Thank you too, and please share the link with me to this briefing. Thank you. That was the last briefing in the Media Center Ukraine Odesa for today. Please stay tuned and follow our announcements for tomorrow and for the next week.